Yeah, nothing really cute to say at the top of this one. This was a gripping, but very sad and hard episode to watch. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did. If you haven't already, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you'll be among the first to know. We are here at the sixth episode of American Crime Story, Impeachment. This one titled Manhandled, which is a fitting title because we get just 1 hour block of the series of events that lead to Monica being detained. Unfortunately, she's not aware that she could leave, but we'll get to that. But she's being detained in a hotel for 12 hours without a lawyer, without her parents, by the FBI. She's being, well, she's not being physically manhandled, she is being mentally manhandled and intimidated. There are at least a dozen plus FBI agents that have absconded upon this room to just make sure that they can get the most out of her and get her on their team, flipped on their team before the president does his oath of office the following day. So they are sort of in a time crunch to get her to get what they want from her, and she is a scared 24-year-old girl. The episode starts with the FBI folks getting all set up in the room and knowing that they have Linda, and Linda has to make contact with Monica to get her to a point so that they can then sort of take over and get her to come. So Linda's been calling and paging Monica and getting no response. Monica finally does, like, hey, I'm sorry, I was out working out. And Linda's like, we need to go meet. And I'm like, I don't have time. I don't really have time to do that. So, well, I figured out a deal for our whole situation. And Monica was like, bet, I'll come. And she's just wearing her, Monica shows up just wearing her sweats and like, cause she just came from the gym. She's like, all right, cool, let's do it. So they meet up in this mall food court. But the mall food court also has a hotel that's attached to it with all the shopping. Monica's just sitting there at the bottom of the table, and Linda, armed with 2 guards, FBI agents, comes down the escalator. Monica doesn't quite see them originally. They're a little bit further behind her until they get to the ground floor. Come down the escalator, Monica waves. Just as a kid, she doesn't know about the trap that Linda sort of put out for her, which is another sad moment. She thinks her friend is coming to meet her. And then she gets blindsided as she gets down there, and Linda sits there sheepishly with her head down when the FBI agents say, hey, Monica, we need you to come with us for issues against perjury and all of this good stuff, and go into detail. They take her up into the room and sort of separate the two of them. And so for a while there, Mike, played by Colin Hanks, is sort of being the lead person to investigate and tell Monica the situation. And he is hard on her, but you can tell there's a piece of caring somewhere behind that exterior. But not too much, because the whole situation is gross. He informs her that you shouldn't get a lawyer. You shouldn't get the lawyer that you have because he is involved with Vernon Jones, and it all seems a bit to be a bit of a conspiracy. So I wouldn't, but we can take care of this now. Basically giving her the information and making it seem that she should not contact a lawyer, she should not contact anybody. We're on your side, we're going to go ahead and fix this, but we need you to cooperate. At that point in time, Monica is just mean mugging and staring at Linda, who's in the next room sitting on the bed with her kind of head down, not really looking, because she's partially ashamed. This whole time before leading up to, she's sort of fixing her brain to say she's doing the right thing. Even when she enters the hotel before taking those 2 guards down to meet Monica, she's like, this is for the best. This is the right thing to do. So she keeps psyching her brain up. She knows she is going to hurt this girl, but it is for the bigger picture, because there's a bit of a moment later when she goes into all the things that the White House means. There's a scene which Sarah Paulson plays wonderfully, where she goes into all the things that previous presidents have done in the White House. This person's done this. This person signed this. This person hand wrote letters. Bush hand wrote letters to fallen officers' families, whereas the first thing that President Clinton does in office is gets his dick sucked by an unsuspecting young girl. So that's where her brain is, and stuff, the why she's doing this, but throwing her friend just out to the wolves. Mike keeps seeing this interaction. He's like, no, we're done with this. We're not going to play this game. So he closes the door to the room that's adjacent so that she can't see Linda. She just wants to talk. He just wants to have a convo with Monica one-on-one. Linda thinks she's about to, well, I'm done here. I'm going to leave. And they detain her as well. So they have her sit there. Like, no, sit down. I'm just going to hang out there. So I don't know. It's unclear exactly the time it was when she gets to eventually leave. Because there's this decision made that we've got Monica enough that you can go ahead and take off. But she's detained as well for a bit. And they just lay into Monica. Monica starts having what it feels like a panic attack, which is understandable. She's being accused of perjury. She's being accused of all these things. She is realizing that her life is going to be forever changed. This information is going to be get out. She cares about the people that they want her to set up. They want her to admit that she is falsified this affidavit, which they have. They tell her that we have these tapes. They want her to call Vernon Jordan. They want to call her lawyer. They want to call Betty, the secretary for Clinton. They want to call Clinton while she's wearing a wire. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not throwing them. But she wants to warn them. And they're like, no, can't do that. And it goes back and forth. She goes to the bathroom and sits there. Before she goes to the bathroom, they rip out the phone that's in the bathroom because they don't want her to be able to contact anybody outside to sort of get the information that at any point in time, she's not under arrest. So there's no handcuffs on her. They've not charged her with anything. At any point in time, she could leave. And she's not aware of that just because when her lawyer's not present, or no adult is present, none of her adults. She is a 24-year-old, so at the very least, she is an adult, but she doesn't have the awareness, law-wise, that she could just bounce. And so this goes on and on and on, and it's frightening to think that Monica actually went through this. Mike, played by Colin Hanks, doesn't really get anywhere. He feels like he's sort of spinning his wheels. Monica keeps kind of the process going on and on and on, and eventually they bring in a heavier gun, who originally said that he was going to sit out because he can be too intimidating. But he comes and he makes it worse. Monica starts crying. She's just completely broken down and taken aback by how aggressive this other FBI agent is. The FBI agent's like, yo, we got a timeline, we got a time crunch. And she's not really hearing it. She is still, at the very least, trying to get her bearings. And so she's like, I want to call my mom. Let me call my mom. And there's some back and forth between the FBI agents, but she is finally allowed to call her mother, played by Mira Sorvino. Mom, the call, however, originally is protected, is being completely handled and whatnot. There's an FBI agent with his finger on the hang-up button for her to not give her mom any type of idea of what's happening. It's very intimidating, very coercing and very forceful, but they're all watching her and they got the finger on the book to say, don't say anything out of the norm, because they don't want her to get out to anybody else that she is, or how this is being handled. Because the second she does, they're going to be like, you don't need to be in there. Get the hell out of there. She talked to her mom, but she just kind of goes through the room like, I'm fine, because her mom's been paging her for a while, and if she doesn't get back, her mom's going to question. So she calls and is like, I'm fine, I love you, but you can tell her mom can see that there's something wrong in her voice. So it doesn't really dissuade her at all. Hangs up after saying I love you, and they kind of go back to this rickable role. Eventually Monica says, hey, can I step out? I'll be right back. And basically it's, I need to go make a phone call without you guys being around. And much of the chagrin and how forceful they are, they kind of are in this hedging bet parts where they like, we don't want you to go because this is a time crunch, but at the same time they know that legally they can't do anything to restrain her. No one has ever put their hands on her. No one has ever put any handcuffs on her. So eventually they acquiesce and they let her go. And Mike's like, she's never coming back. Like, we've lost her. She is never returning. Because they all know in that room, she doesn't have to return. She could leave. But she's not aware of that. And she's like, no, I promise I'll be back in 30 minutes. And so she goes down to make calls. She tries to call Betty, no answer. She tries to call Vernon, I believe, too. No answer, no response. She doesn't want to leave this type of information on voicemails because there's a litany of tapes upstairs that she now is aware of. And she eventually gets in touch. She calls her mom again and lets her know the situation, lets her know that she's in trouble. And her mom says, I will come out. I'm coming out now. Stay in the room. Don't do anything. And her mom calls her ex-husband, who is also got a friend, Bill Ginsburg, as a sort of a lawyer on retainer, as a friend and as their family lawyer. And her mom's going on her way out to see her. So she goes back up. This is where I think, unfortunately, Monica just sort of wasn't aware, wasn't cognizant. She goes back into the room. She could have left. And it seems like Mike rightfully expected her to. It was a surprise that she came back in there. But she made a promise, and as a child, that's what she wanted to do. So she went back into the room with those folks and sort of stayed detained for another few times. She informed them that her mother is on the way, and they're like, we don't have time to wait for your mother. She's like, my mom doesn't fly, so she's going to be on the train. And they're like, for fuck's sakes, Jesus, okay. But they need her. Like, no matter what happens in this, they need her to flip so that they can go ahead and do this process. It's a twofold things. Yes, they have these tapes, but legally, these tapes weren't created legally. So they can't be used for the most part. So that's where she's not aware of that. She's not cognizant of that, but they know that. They kind of like, we need you to flip so that we can make this an easier process, because there's nothing on those tapes. And we sort of learned that as a side note. There's a Ann Coulter side note with Stop George and Ann Coulter, played by Colby Smulders, who they're listening to the tapes, but nothing comes back on the tapes that sounds like Quid Pro Quo. That's what it feels like, but no one actually verbalizes and says that, and she doesn't say, I got this job because of this. So they know that there's not a lot to go off the tapes. What they have is that affidavit that is a lie, and they know that's a lie, so they need her to say that it's a lie so they can kind of get all of this going. She stays with him and watches TV with him. Mike is flipping through channels and sort of comes onto the point where there's a Clinton, a CNN like bullet saying, oh, stay tuned for tomorrow when we talk about President Clinton's oath of office. And that sort of gives a little hint to Monica about why the timing is so important. She also overhears a conversation where they start yelling. But Mike quickly is trying to change the channel so she doesn't become so cognizant of what's going on. We get a cut scene sometime in the middle of all of this where Linda goes back home and her daughter can see that she's strained and in trouble, and Linda is kind of going through it. There's a moment before that happens when Monica sees, after the phone calls, Monica sees Linda at the mall, and they have just an interaction of no words. They just stare at each other. Monica's like, just looks at her, and there's bags of, like, I believe, the candle store or something like that. Like, basically she's been shopping. And so even though it is weighing on her, it's not weighing on her to the same effect that it is weighing on Monica, because she looks completely broken and this woman's having a good time. Well, since I'm at the mall, let me spend some time shopping. After a few hours of television, Monica asks the FBI agents, can we go to the mall? Can we go shopping? So two agents are following them around the mall. It just looks bizarre. It just sounds wild. Mike being one of them, played by Colin Hanks. And they go to Crate and Barrel. They go get food. And sort of get to know. Monica has this moment where she realizes that she's never going to have kids. No man's ever going to want to touch her or be with her. And part of that is because she's like, oh yeah, if I have to spend she figures out exactly why I'm 28 years, why you keep throwing around, and Mike sort of details what each penalty entails, and they're kind of starting to dissuade her and kind of calm her down a little bit. But she is of the belief, starting to believe that if this gets out, and when this gets out, her parents and her grandma's going to be so disappointed in her family or friends. There's no one going to, like she said, everyone want to touch her because she's been in this situation with one of the most powerful men in the world. So there's going to be a lot of people who just don't want to be associated with her, and there's going to be some who feel intimidated by who she has been with. And it's all just, it's another big, just the heart just breaking. But eventually, Mama shows up, and Mom comes, knocks on the door, and she just sees like how intimidating all of this is, and she just sees how they've been kind of just like vultures on top of Monica, and she just tells them like, "Hey, here's the deal. We will." I think she gets another room. She's like, "I want to talk to my daughter privately." So she takes her to another room. But what's crazy is they open up the hallway, and they have barricaded the hallway. There's FBI agents on this end, there's FBI agents on this one, and they have a room that technically the agents are also, that they basically blocked off the whole floor, and they've gotten that room too, so they let them have that room. Whether or not that room is wired, I still kind of feel that way. I feel like it could have been, but whatever. But they have a talk, and she's like, "Well, what is going on? What is happening?" Monica mentioned that she wants to call Betty and Vernon. Mom is adamant, like, do not call them. You need to start thinking about yourself. Like, do not call them. They'll take care of this. They're going to destroy you. So you need to worry about just you. And she lets Monica know that she's called her dad, her ex-husband, and they are standing by on the phone, waiting to have a conversation once they get Bill Ginsburg in line and up to speed. They're at the ready and want to talk to someone. And that breaks Monica a little bit more to know that her father is aware. But Mom says, "Hey, I'm going to go talk to these folks. You stay here. I'm going to go talk to them and see what we can do." And she goes in there and sort of lays out the law that, hey, my daughter will do whatever it is to clear her name and to get this passed and do whatever. What do you need her to do? And they tell her, well, we need this, we need her to record herself with these folks. She's like, "I can do all of those things for sure. I don't know if she's going to go for the recording. But if you can put that she gets immunity in writing, we can go ahead and I can probably get this done for you." And they're like, "It's like 11 at night. We're not going to be able to, we don't have a typewriter. We can't get this done." And she's like, "Well, then we're not doing this until we have something in writing that says this is what we get." So they go tit for tat, and nothing comes of it for a bit. They bring Monica back in, and she's like, "This is the deal. We want to do this. But we're not doing this until we get something written." And so it is then blurted out that her father is aware. And one of the agents is like, "Fuck, so why the father knows now too?" Because he knows if the father knows about the daughter being in this type of trouble, in this type of situation, this is going to collapse quickly because he's going to shut this down. They call, she calls the dad because Mama told Monica that, "Hey, your dad's waiting." So she calls, and you can hear that brief moment where it's like, "Hey, Daddy," and Dad doesn't quite know what's happening. He knows that there's been an affair. He doesn't know how long. He doesn't want to get into all that. He doesn't care about that. He knows that his daughter's in trouble. So, long story. They connect for a bit, and he's like, "Hey, here's Bill Ginsburg, and this is going to be your lawyer. Don't say anything else. This is your lawyer." And Bill gets on and says, "Hey, have they detained you? Have they are you cuffed?" And she's like, "Wait, no?" She's like, "Do you have handcuffs on you?" "No." "Do you have this?" "No." "Cool. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to walk the fuck out of there." This is a very hilarious interaction between Mike and Bill Ginsburg happens where Mike just starts swearing at him. So what the fuck are you doing? Like, he just lays into him. It's like, "You guys don't have any rights to do this. You're going to do that. You guys are out your damn mind. I want you to put whatever it is you promised Monica in writing right now." And they're like, "We don't have a typewriter." She's like, "You don't have a computer. You don't have a goddamn fax. Like, I know that hotel. I've stayed there before. Go downstairs, write it up, and fax it over, and we'll wait." And they're like, "We don't have time to do that." It's like, "Okay, cool. Put Monica back on." And that's when he tells Monica, we leave him. Yeah, get out of there. So Monica grabs her mom, and they just head out the door. Not before Monica apologizes to Mike and says, "I'm sorry," which is heartbreaking because she feels that with all the torture that these folks have put her through, she feels she's doing something incorrectly by not giving him what he wants. It is a filthy and dirty feeling episode. The title, Manhandled, is very, very apropos and very heartbreaking that that young woman had to go through that without being given the proper channels of how to exactly do things. In theory, she should have been in and out. Like the second they started accusing her of everything, she should have immediately been able to call her lawyer and be like, yeah, I will deal with this at another time. But now this is not how this is going to be done. Riveting episode dramatically though. TV wise, it is keeps you on the edge of your seat. But when you think about that this really happened, it gets heartbreaking. But that was a really well done episode. This is sort of the last two episodes have been this one and this one have sort of been the culmination or the midpoint. And I think from now on, we're going to probably, I think the next episode is called The Assassination of Monica Lewinsky. It's going to be the one where all the dirt, anything that comes up, they're going to just throw her face out there. We see a clip of the infamous, did not have sexual relations with that woman. We see that clip, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to watch them just break apart this young lady's life, and we're now seeing this. We always got to see it from the sensationalized side, from the media side, from even a little bit from the Clinton side, but we never got to see it from the inside. So it's going to be fascinating to continue this world and go on as this show gets better and better and better. What did you guys think about the 6th episode of American Crime Story Impeachment Manhandle? We'll hear your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodABI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere that plays podcasts, we're there. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.